So I've had quite a few people ask me about my thoughts on brain retraining programs or neuroplasticity programs, the DNRS, the lightning process, the Gupta program. I know there's plenty of those kinds of programs, and it's a good question because I've mentioned in a few of my videos that I did one of those brain retraining courses. I did DNRS, and I read some books about the lightning process, and I was for a while in my recovery journey very interested because I'd heard a lot of recovery stories of people recovering really quickly with these kinds of programs. So naturally, I explored it as a path for recovery, quite excitedly, I suppose, listening to stories of people who said they were able to overcome their whole illness or situation in a matter of weeks or quite quick recoveries. And again, it's a lot about what I spoke about in your beliefs about the illness and your recovery and all of that. So I read a few introductory books about these kinds of programs, and I will say this: it was very helpful for me at the time. So I will say these programs can have a really useful place in the recovery process and a very helpful place in the recovery process for a lot of people. What's key here is it's going to depend on where you're at and your own personal situation. So I've had a few people ask me in a one-on-one session about it, and just from where the person was at in their journey, I didn't think it was going to be necessary or helpful at all. They were kind of beyond that place where it plays a role. And I'll briefly talk about my experience to explain how the role it played in my journey. And it was like that for me, where it really was helpful for a period of time. But eventually, I had to go past it. I had to leave it behind, really, because I could have gotten stuck in that place as well. So whenever we find a rigid process that we think is going to fix things and try and get rid of things, you can get stuck there if you fixate on it. So just to speak from my personal experience, a little bit about the pros and cons of these courses, these brain retraining, neuroplasticity, also not just brain retraining and neuroplasticity, also positive thinking in general, because that's what a lot of it is it's like, focusing on rewiring your brain with positive thoughts and, letting go of negative thought patterns and that kind of thing. So just a broad take on the whole positive thinking, neuroplasticity, brain retraining, and what are the pros and cons. And firstly, I'll speak about what was so helpful about it at the time in my recovery. So it was kind of at the turning point in my journey where I was realizing that it was really my beliefs about my recovery that were holding me back. So I'd started watching recovery stories and seeing that, oh my gosh, people can actually recover from very severe situations. Like, it really doesn't actually matter how severe your situation is, you can recover, which kind of cuts away at a fundamental belief that had formed based on all the negative stuff I'd read, that the worse your situation gets, the longer it goes on for, the less likely you are to recover. If you go on chronic fatigue syndrome forums or long COVID forums, there's a lot of people that will tell you that. There's a lot of people that kind of get stuck in really tough situations, and then there's a lot of fear, and then they're trying to help other people by saying, look, I don't want you to go the same way as me, so don't let it get worse, all of that, otherwise you're not going to recover. But what's really going on is there's a lot of people that are unable to really face what they need to face, and you can get stuck in that place of fear, and then that fear spreads onto other people, and then these beliefs form, and that's a lot of what happens on those forums. And I think it's a massive, this unaddressed fear, this repressed fear, is a massive driving force in what makes this illness and this whole mechanism that causes the symptoms and the illness and the getting stuck to play out, is these shared beliefs and fear that spreads. So anyways, I was at a point where I was realizing that was holding me back, and I was watching recovery stories and seeing that, oh my goodness, it's my own beliefs about recovery that are stopping me here. And then I started hearing people talking about, oh yeah, they, listening to recovery stories on Raylan Eagle's channel, and people talking about how they did brain retraining. And at first there was a skepticism, saying and I think if I'd come across these brain retraining programs, months prior, I would have dismissed them quite quickly, because I was like, no, what I've got is a physical illness, and the only way it's going to be recovered is, if I clear all the spike protein out of my body, or find some way to, really focusing on supplements and diet and the physical physiology and that kind of thing, not realizing what was more important. Sure, there was lots of inflammation in the body, but that was really a result of the stressed out state that my beliefs and my fears and my resistance patterns were putting the body in. So it came at a time when there was still some skepticism, like, oh, this sounds like a load of rubbish. But the reason there's what's the word, like a skepticism, or like a wanting to dismiss those methods of recovery, was because it was challenging beliefs of mine, and that always leads to like a defense mechanism. So hearing that somebody can recover with a brain retraining course in a couple of months or a couple of weeks, or some people even just a few days, it kind of comes at your beliefs and your identity that's formed around, I am stuck with this chronic illness. I need a lot of sympathy because I am, this is a really difficult thing from that people don't recover from, and this identity forms of, I can't do this, I can't do that. I'll be lucky if I ever get back to my health again. And as I've spoken about before, this identity forms, and when something questions that identity and those beliefs, it's going to feel uncomfortable, and then there's just natural defense mechanisms in the mind that will be like, no, that's bullshit. I've got to dismiss that because it's it's making me uncomfortable. But we don't think about it like that. We just identify with the thought that says, well, that can't be true. But what can be really helpful, and I think a lot of people watching these videos are in that place, because it's what I talk about a lot, is realizing that it's really about your beliefs, and you really have to be willing to let go of your beliefs, because that's really what it's all about. If you're going to hold on to beliefs, that's going to keep you stuck. As soon as you're willing to be like, well, maybe I just don't know, maybe I don't know anything at all, and I can just be open to all my beliefs being challenged and falling away. And if you come at it with that approach of, you're going to have beliefs, like we have formed beliefs over time, but if you're willing to let them, and they will come up, if you're willing to be like, why does this bother me so much? Why is this triggering me? There's going to be a belief there. If you're just willing to dig a little bit below the surface, if you dig into the thoughts of like, oh, that's rubbish. Okay, well, why is that rubbish? Well, it's rubbish because I know that this illness takes a long time to recover from, or something like that. There's a belief. There's the belief saying, oh my gosh, I have a belief that I have to take a long time to recover from this. And you can do that. It just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And the deeper the beliefs are that we let go of, the more freedom you can find. And like, oh my gosh, that was just a belief holding me back. So what happened is, once I was being introduced to these recovery programs and neuroplasticity programs, I was aware that what was so powerful here was beliefs. And I decided, like, I read, and they talk about it in the introductory books and stuff, that yeah, if you're just going to dismiss this course as not working, well, you're already setting it up for failure. So I kind of went, and I heard of people recovering quickly. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to recover. If I want to recover quickly, I have to believe I'm going to recover quickly. And that was the approach I had at that time. I wouldn't say forming new beliefs is that important. It's more important to let go of old beliefs. But I'll just talk through how the process played out for me. And so I decided that, I'm going to explore this pathway, and but I'm going to let go of the beliefs that come up that say, well, this is a bit weird, even if there's stuff in the course, because I was very analytical, scientifically minded at that time. I love science, I love philosophy, really critical thinking, very intellectual. So, there was a strong part of me that, a strong skepticism to things that didn't, fit into that framework. But I decided that I was going to take what worked for me and apply it, and not get put off by the little things. And that can be very helpful, is just to be like, well, what if I just don't dismiss something just because it doesn't fit with what I believe? So anyways, I did one of those courses, the DNRS course, and just to think for myself what was so helpful from it, it reinforced the idea that, or I wouldn't say reinforced, but it really helped me to come to terms with the fact that this was a functional, whatever the words are, functional neurological thing, or it was really about, it wasn't about like some cellular damage or some physiological, irreparable, mysterious issue. It was like, and you can talk about it in different ways. So they would talk about it, a lot about the brain. So, certain things have become labeled as threats, and kind of the brain can get in this heightened, so certain parts of the brain, so like if you're talking about the amygdala, the fear system of the brain, it can have become overactive in a sense because of certain life triggers, maybe COVID, but for some people this wasn't from COVID. This can be from a lot of stress in your life, and the brain just with neuroplasticity, it's like what the pathways that get used get more efficient, and that can kind of get out of control, where the fear pathways become really good at what they do, and then can start to spread to things that aren't dangerous. So like, oh, exercise, this is a threat, this is a threat. So you can look at it through the brain, which for me at the time was helpful because I wanted a scientific lens. But you don't even need to talk about it like that. It can just, as I talk about it now, is it was really all about beliefs and feeling into the uncomfortable stuff. So, there was a belief of like, oh, if I do this, this is going to happen. And then there was the belief that I must avoid the symptoms that come up. I mustn't feel that. Those are dangerous. But it was really just repressed fear. It was a unwillingness to really get uncomfortable until I didn't have a choice anymore. So that was helpful, and I say it can be helpful for people, is to realize that this isn't about that. Then what was really helpful as well was it taught me that I don't need the belief that I need somebody to fix me. That's what a lot about the brain retraining is about becoming your own coach in a way. And that was helpful in that, I felt very alone through this journey. No one understood what I was going through. I wasn't in a relationship anymore. I didn't have a lot of places to turn. And I was realizing that you don't need that. It can be great, but you really can give yourself the support you need. And then the practices that I would do were helpful as well, and maybe not just in the way that the course taught them, because I kind of just put it in my own way. So it was like the set of steps that you do, and it's basically just talking to yourself and trying to reassure your body and your brain that you're safe, that there's no threat. And then there would be visualization as well, like imagine yourself doing these activities that cause triggers to help retrain the brain, that, oh, you can do that without symptoms. I always struggled with the visualization. It just, I wasn't good at it. And as I went along, I realized that it wasn't really necessary for me. So what was more powerful for me, if I just think back to, from my perspective now, why it was so helpful, it was, one, I was learning to like self-soothe what was going on. So it's like what I talk about now with emotion work and all of that. I was learning to, it's okay, I love you, to whatever comes up, it's okay. So in the course that I did, it was like focusing on talking to the fear centers in the brain, saying it's okay, you're safe, you can rest, you've worked so hard, there's no threats, I love you, relax. And that's really powerful work, and I highly recommend that now as a way to deal with anything that's uncomfortable, right? Because it's really not about getting rid of anything. It's really not about that. It's really about welcoming the difficult stuff, the scary stuff, the uncomfortable stuff. The more you can welcome it and meet it with love, that's when you can, then it becomes less of a problem, because there's less fear when those things come up. So it's like, oh, there's fear. Well, I love fear. And even if you're afraid of it, okay, that part of me that's afraid of it, it's okay. You can be here. You're welcome. So even though I didn't see it in those, in that framework at the time, I was introduced to that through the brain retraining, and that's what the practice was. I was taking half an hour every morning and half an hour every evening to cultivate this, this self-compassion. It's okay. I'm there for you. You're safe. All of that, and then that kind of evolved over time, and then eventually, I kind of, because it was quite a rigid system. It's like you do these steps and you have to do it this much every day, which I think it was helpful in that it, committed me to the process of, well, if I want to recover, I have to do at least an hour a day of these exercises. So yeah, like committing to it, that's what I did, and I think that was helpful because I was like, I'm going to make this work. But then eventually I want to talk about the downside of the brain retraining courses, and this whole positive thinking. And it's not necessarily to say that this is what these programs are encouraging, these cons, which I'll get to now. It's more that this is kind of just what happens when the mind gets hold of this, when the ego applies these processes. What happens is the resistance shifts. So what the brain retraining is all about is teaching the body that these activities are not threats, they're safe, right? So, maybe there's the belief that anything that brings on symptom is dangerous, I must avoid it. And I think a lot of people go through that phase, and then maybe you've gotten past that, and now you're realizing that you need to do those things a little bit. I wouldn't say go run a 5K. I would say just start where you're at. If walking to your post box brings on a lot of symptoms, and start there. But realizing that it's not about avoiding, it's about bringing on the symptoms and then working with the symptoms. So that was another thing from the course that was really helpful, is it encouraged me that, okay, I actually want to bring on symptoms. Start really small with a little trigger, but so for me, I've been trying with exercise for months already, and just up and down, and all over the place of, should I be doing this, shouldn't I? And then I was like, for me, a massive trigger is I have to keep my heart rate low. So let me purposely raise my heart rate and bring on symptoms. So, I was like, what's the smallest amount of exercise that can quickly raise my heart rate? So I would do like 5 jumping jacks to start, or 10 jumping jacks. And just to say, I had someone comment the other day that starting with 5 jumping jacks is insane, and most people couldn't do that. And that's absolutely fine. I will say to somebody, start with where you're at. But for me, as I said, I've been working with exercise for months already, because I had realized that I needed to try and introduce exercise slowly, that cutting it out hadn't worked for me. Anyways, what happens, the cons of this, of these programs is that, okay, the activities themselves, I'm learning that those are good. I mustn't be afraid of that. What happens is the resistance shifts to the negative thoughts, or the negative emotions, and we try to get rid of those. So the beliefs form that, okay, I have to think positive. If a thought comes up that, oh no, this activity is going to make me really tired and I'm going to get symptoms, we must, a lot of the programs teach, like, stop, no negative thoughts, and then practice these positive thoughts. Yes, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And again, maybe it was helpful, and I think it was at a certain time when I was just purely in this negative loop all the time. Maybe a little bit of this positive thinking was helpful. But you have to notice then when you're now resisting the negative thoughts. So, as I said earlier, it's not about getting rid of anything. It's not about controlling anything. It's not about this is good, more of this is bad, less of this. It's really, and this is when I really started to, because I was doing this brain retraining, and I was able to do some exercise, but I was stuck still, until I started going deeper with the meditation and with Angelo DeLullo's work, reading his book, and realizing that it's all about resistance. It's all about it's a thought, a symptom, an emotion is only a problem because there's another belief or something saying this shouldn't be here. This is bad. And then that causes so much struggle, because it's like, it's there, but you don't want it to be there. And then, it just causes so much tension and struggle. When you just realize that it's here, and that's okay, it can be here. And oh my gosh, anything can be here. For me, that was such a relief. So that's really what I want to talk about, is that the con of these programs is that it can reinforce these beliefs that only positive thinking is good, and I shouldn't, I must get rid of negative thoughts and negative emotions and those kinds of things. When I say that's not what worked for me, and it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. It's really about, and maybe it works for some people, but if I'm talking honestly from my perspective, it's really about, can I be okay with feeling anything right now? And also, I've mentioned this before, but authenticity with ourselves. So, because that's still some form of emotional repression, or some repressing something. No, I'm feeling good. I'm strong. I'm healthy. I can do this. When there's a part of us that is like struggling, and it's like it wants to come out and just say, I can't do this. So then, to be authentic and be like, okay, what am I actually feeling right now? Like, and it's okay. Whatever comes up, it's okay. Can I just be honest with myself and like, okay, I'm afraid. Okay, what does that fear feel like? Can I welcome that fear? And again, this is where I'll say it's really about allowance, acceptance, and kindness and compassion and love for those parts of yourselves that we have repressed for so long, that we are so afraid of, that everybody represses, and that's why we all do it, because we learn this from a young age from everybody else. We don't choose this, but that's just how our nervous systems work. Is we empathically see how everybody else. It's not conscious, but it's built into us from a young age. And can you just make space for whatever wants to be there? And for me, that was a game changer. I remember clearly the day that I watched one of Angelo DeLulo's videos on his YouTube channel about authenticity or something, and I just went and lay down and was like, whatever I feel is okay. Like, I'm not going to try to control the thoughts or anything. And it can take a while. We can sit with that intention, but we can still get caught up in the thoughts of, what should I be doing and that kind of thing. But I remember clearly when this shift in perspective happened, where it was such a relief in, it's like, oh my gosh, there's nothing I need to run away from. There's nothing I need to not feel. There was always this fear of, what if that comes up? Like, I'd gone through a difficult relationship and a breakup, and there had been so much strong emotion that at first I'd repressed so much, and eventually it was like, oh my gosh, if I just let anything come up, it's not a problem. And then practicing like that. So whenever something comes up and you feel, to be honest, if it ever feels like there's a problem, right, that's a great time to inquire, is, what am I resisting? What thought do I not want to see? What do I not want to feel? It's really all about that. And for stuff will keep coming up, so maybe for a while it will feel great. I remember it was for me, where it was like, well, it's really just all about resistance. So whenever anything came up, I was like, what am I resisting? And then I would just sit with it, take 10 minutes to just feel into the body, meditate, and just really, again, work on welcoming those emotions, those symptoms, those thoughts. A great analogy Angelo uses is it's like a little child, like all of this repressed, the stuff that we are so afraid of feeling, fear, guilt, shame. If you're feeling guilt, the natural response is, how do I get rid of this? But it's just something that wants to be felt, right? It's like a little child knocking on your door in the night, that's just wants to be let in, and most people don't, but you have this opportunity to welcome this part of your humanity. It's a part of the human experience for all of us, and really, once you start to let these things in, and it's intense work. It can be. Some people have these really extreme emotional, these emotions just come, and it can be really extreme. Often it's really intense when there's a part of us that's still trying to cling on and fight. And again, I'll say it's just about, can you welcome it in? Can you feel it? So, yeah, I guess that's my overall take on the brain retraining courses. Is can be really helpful for certain people at certain times, but it's another thing as well, is it can be seen as a way to, for me it was seen as like, again, a way to not face the difficult stuff. It's like, this is going to be a quick fix, and then I can feel good all the time. And as I said, that's not what it's about, right? That's not going to get you where you want to, because there's always going to be ups and downs. There's always going to be pleasure and pain and nice emotions and difficult emotions. It's really about, can I stop resisting and just feel into whatever comes up and welcome it. And yeah, so it was like looking for a way out. And again, there's no way out. That's not what you want to hear, maybe. But the way out is inward, right? So there's nothing that's going to free you from this, except going straight into every part that you don't want to feel. If you can do that, you realize that the problem was trying to get away from all of this stuff. But it can take a while before we accept that, before we're willing to do that. And that's why I've said before, sometimes you've got to be absolutely beaten and bruised by life, by this illness, before you're willing to really give up your ego and stop trying to look for a way out. And so it's all going to play out how it needs to, right? For me, at the time, it felt like this was horrendous, but having gone through this whole thing, it had to get worse and worse and worse and worse, until I was willing to let go of all my beliefs that were holding me back, let go of all my identities, let go of what I thought life was, and open up to the things that would really help, and be willing to surrender and feel. And then it's like, oh my gosh, this was such a gift. It was like, it had to get so bad before I was ever going to do what I needed to do. So yeah, I hope that's helpful, and yeah, best of luck to everybody, as always. Lots of love.